Good evening, ladies and gentlemen, and welcome on this lovely Tuesday evening to the SAIEE Women in Engineering webinar on women making a difference in the renewable energy industry. Before we start, a few webinar considerations. Attendees are reminded to turn up the volume on your device. The control panel is located on the right-hand side of your screen, and the chat function is reserved for webinar organizers and panelists to chat with each other. However, we encourage you to ask questions, which we'll get to after the talk. I'd like to introduce you to our host today, is Ms. Matisaku, who is the chairperson of the SAIEE Women in Engineering chapter. She started her career as an engineer in training at Eskom Distribution in 2010. She was appointed Network Operations Engineer specializing in real-time power system analysis in 2011. Currently, she's a Chief Engineer at Eskom, System Operator specializing in asset integration. She's registered as a professional engineer with the Engineering Council of South Africa, ECSA. She holds qualifications including a BEng in Electrical Engineering, a certificate in Business Management, and a master's degree in Engineering Management. She has been a member of the South African Institute of Electrical Engineers since 2016 and participates in SAIEE Central Gauteng Centre activities. She served as Vice Treasurer for CGC in 2019 and Treasurer in 2020. She was elected Chairperson for the SAIEE Women in Engineering chapter in 2022. Over to you, Mighty.
Good evening, ladies and gentlemen, and welcome to the Women in Engineering chapter webinar. A very happy Heritage Month to you all. And yeah, as introduced, my name is Maite. I'm struggling with my webcam, so please excuse me on that. You'll just be hearing my voice. All right, so thank you so much for making time to join us this evening for the webinar titled Women Making a Difference in the Renewable Energy Industry. So okay, just a moment. The renewable energy is currently playing a role in supporting the South African economy. And we definitely have women that are participating in those important roles and playing part in sustainable energy development. The Renewable Energy Program has enabled framework and has attracted substantial investment into the South African economy. And as it has been shared, that South Africa at the moment, as we speak, the renewable energy is currently injecting over 6,000 megawatts of power onto the South African grid. So tonight, we are very delighted to host one of the women who are making their mark into the renewable energy industry. And we are very delighted to host Ms. Nondumiso Ngema, who is the renewable energy expert. So I'll now go through her bio, which reads as follows. Nondumiso is a highly skilled professional with extensive experience spanning various industries. She is a professional electrical engineer, PREng, with over 7 years of proficiency in plant asset management, operations, maintenance, reliability, power systems engineering, system modeling, and studies. She has a master's degree in electrical engineering from the University of KZN and GCC in factories for electrical engineers. She is currently pursuing her master's in business administration at University of Witwatersrand. In her current role, Nondumiso serves as a utility operations and maintenance manager for large-scale solar power plant within the renewable energy sector. Her profound passion lies in nurturing young engineers, particularly women, and she has previously served as a role model in STEM program aimed at inspiring young females in STEM fields to become change leaders and challenge stereotypes. Welcome, Ms. Nondumiso. I think everyone who is online can agree with me that this is, one of the leaders that are in the forefront. These are, the one of the women that we look up to, role models for young girls who are also coming up. So, Nondumiso, we are very delighted to host you tonight and welcome to our webinar tonight.
Thank you very much, Ms. Maide. I think I am very much excited to be part of this platform, and I hope to have a very much fruitful engagement with everybody online, and here to answer all the questions. And yeah, I'm excited to be here.
Absolutely. Are we able to see you? Is your webcam working?
Yes, I am on camera. Please, can anybody else confirm if they can hear and see me?
Yes, perfect. Please proceed.
Okay, excellent, excellent. All right, so without further ado, let's go right into the questions that we have prepared for this evening. Okay, so the first question is that if you can please just share with us your career path to the point that you find yourself now. I mean, your role says that you are currently the utility operations and maintenance manager. So please kindly share with us your career path up to the manager that you are from. Also share with us from the university studies and how have your education and your career path lead to the point that you are right now?
Thank you, Maid, for the question. So originally, I'm from KZN, Newcastle, and I started as a young girl from the rurals of Newcastle in KwaZulu-Natal, without really understanding what I wanted to do at the end of the day, and having little to no exposure in terms of who I ultimately wanted to be. But fortunately enough, in my career, I've had opportunities or people meeting, like I've met people who have also introduced me to different things. So to be quite honest with everybody, I never really understood what electrical was until I had to be there to actually differentiate what electrical engineering was before anything else. So my interest initially was more on the chemical engineering side of things. That was before varsity days. And when I started my undergraduate studies in electrical engineering, I then discovered or understood the differences between the different engineering disciplines. And that's where I now ended myself or landed myself in electrical engineering, which became my passion. So I studied at UKZN, as already mentioned, as part of my BSc degree. And I think one of the main things that actually drove me into pursuing more and more within the field is it started when I was doing my final year. One of the projects I was mainly dealing with was on energy generation, but using synchronous machines that would be ideally used at ESCOM at the moment, ESCOM power stations at the moment. So I had a lot of passion around the subject, protection, integration of those synchronous machines into the grid, etc., etc. So then I won final year project, and from there it sort of developed this drive in me, of wanting to know more beyond just my undergraduate studies. Yes, I needed the money at the time, but I think the passion and how much I just wanted to know more pushed me towards doing my master's degree in electrical engineering. So just shortly after completing my BSc degree, I went into master's engineering degree, and it was just an expansion of the same or similar type of topic around synchronous machines, generators to be specific for generating electricity, how we protect those machines, etc. So I then completed my master's degree in electrical engineering. And I think through that, in between, I also I got a lot of opportunities for exposure. I started at ESCOM Generation, doing VEC work there. I also was part of Mondi Paper and Pulp in Richards Bay at some point. I also was at ESCOM Transmission at some point. So I think that sort of exposure also gave me an understanding, a different understanding and perspective in terms of what ideally electrical engineering was about. And from there, I think then my career took its spin in ArcelorMittal in Vanderbilt Park, where I was mostly, I would think I was appointed as a junior electrical engineer, and I think at the time it was called candidate engineer. I was part of a very structured training program at ArcelorMittal, which really created a solid foundation into my career. The exposure was quite massive, and it was quite great for me to also understand what I wanted to ultimately become, or what I wanted to understand more. So from ArcelorMittal, I then moved to the public sector, which was Department of Public Works at the time, and it's a very completely different environment. It was a completely different environment for me. I sort of had to adapt to a lot of things, different processes, and also just understanding the whole built environment, because electrical engineering alone is very broad. So I spent my time at Department of Public Works, learned quite a lot within the building environment. But in the midst of all of that, I also got other opportunities, because while in that space, one of my main things was also just to understand where I ultimately wanted to be. So I then decided during that time that a secondment would actually be great for me. And I was fortunate to find an opportunity with Mott MacDonald, which was a consulting firm at the time, mainly responsible for power system studies, grid integration studies of renewable power plants, both solar and wind. And I was working mostly with African countries. At the time, I don't think I did anything in South Africa. So that also helped me understand what renewable energy was about, in as much I was more on the consulting side of things, but it sort of exposed me into what I really grow passion towards, and that's how I ended up saying, look, I would really like to understand more within this space. So moving from Mott, then moved to Enel Green Power, which was my first official role within the renewable industry as a plant manager, managing a 66 megawatt plant, and it was quite an experience. There was a lot to learn. There's still a lot to learn within the space, and I think that's how my passion started growing and growing, and moving from Enel Green Power as a solar plant manager into a technical specialist, and ultimately out of Enel Green Power into the solar group as now a utility manager fleet, managing different solar plants of different scales, has also just been one of the most eye-opening, I would say, opportunities for me up to this front. So in summary, that really is just an overview of where I started from KZN Newcastle into where I am, and hopefully an indication of also where I would like to be in the next coming few years. Thank you, Mike.
Okay, wow, that is such an, thank you so much for such a, wow, inspiring story. I mean, from where you started off in KZN, from all towards moving into different electrical engineering spaces, from ESCOM in Mondi cogeneration, in ESCOM transmission, ArcelorMittal. There's just so many so much experience that you have, that we appreciate that you have, and thank you so much for sharing that with us. So maybe just to touch on a little bit, you mentioned that you did travel some African countries. Can you just mention a few for us to know?
So it wasn't really traveling into those countries, but I was more responsible for doing studies, grid integration studies. So you'd find countries like Botswana wanting to integrate a solar power plant into their network. So my role was mainly to try and see if they can evacuate power in a specific substation, for instance, they're chosen for the project. Is the network going to be stable? What are the disadvantages and advantages, and where can the company optimize their integration? So it wasn't really physical travel, it was just desktop related type of studies.
Okay, I see. All right, that's brilliant. Thank you for sharing that with us. All right, so to all attendees, please remember to put in your questions. You can start posting them now under the questions panel. And to also note that we do have under chat, we have some offerings that we have put in there. We've got a link on how to become a SAIEE member. We also have a link on how to subscribe to our SAIEE TV and also to download our latest What Now magazine. Please just take note of that. And then moving over to the second question, what has been your career highlights and lowlights as a woman in engineering?
Thank you for that question. I could talk, the whole night about the subject of being a woman in this
Yes,
space. And I
correct.
think the most career highlight for me has really been around opportunities I have grabbed and opportunities that have been given to me along the journey. I've already mentioned, how my career has progressed over the years, and I don't take for granted all the opportunities that came with that. I mean, people believing, it starts with someone just believing in you and someone giving you a platform to showcase what you can do. So that has mainly really assisted me in who I am today and who I ultimately want to become at the end of the day. And I think also just how I have also positioned myself in the same industry that presents a lot of challenges, and it takes me to the low lights of the engineering field as a woman, of course, where you need to consistently fight barriers, where you need to consistently change stereotypes. I mean, people still believe that women are only good in the kitchen, as an example, and that has changed over time. But you still find people who are really, really reluctant into adapting and understanding that as a woman, you can still do the same thing that everybody else is doing. So really, for me, it has been being exposed. It has been being given opportunities to grow in the industry as much as I have grown to this extent, and also just appreciating that it doesn't end here. Engineering is very broad. There's different dynamics into engineering, and learning does not end today. It continues and continues. So that has been really great for me over the past 7 years. I would say it's really been eye-opening. And I also, in the midst of all of this, I've found passion into mentoring, and I don't take that for granted, because I think it's also just one of the opportunities that have been presented to me. In as much as it's always been passion to me to grow somebody else or to nurture somebody else who's younger than me into whatever they ultimately want to become, I think being given those opportunities by the young girls or the young engineers that are still growing is something also I don't take for granted. I've been exposed to graduates. I've been exposed to young women in high school who still trying to figure themselves up. And I always relate to those young girls as the young Nondumiso from Newcastle, who didn't even understand what engineering was about, but wanted to do engineering. So I think that has really been a highlight, to see them grow, to see them start believing in themselves more than they had before we met, and all of those. Of course, there's challenges in between, but my word to them is that I don't want to lie to you. You will get into this space, but you will have to fight barriers. It doesn't start with you and it doesn't end with you. Remember, there's still others coming after you. And your role, once you get there, is to fight for everybody else who still needs to be there. And I think I look at this as a low light, because I still feel that we shouldn't be fighting because we are women. We are women, we can't change that. We should be accepted from a perspective that we can do it. And I mean, I've met a lot of wonderful women, and I'm sure a lot of them are connected tonight as well. But we we all still have to fight through barriers, through stereotypes, through a whole lot of things, especially in the engineering space where we are minority. And it's not supposed to be like that. And I would say, in as much as it sometimes drains you as a person, but it also creates an opportunity for you to actually relook at your role within the space, position yourself where you are able to create other opportunities for other young girls who still want to be where you are and more. So in as much as it's a low light, it's still also an opportunity for us as women to really, really push hard and ensure that we create platforms for other women that are still coming within this space. And maybe they wouldn't have to fight as much as we are fighting. So yes, I think that sort of covers what I would deem as highlights and definitely lowlights.
Brilliant, brilliant. Okay, thank you. Thank you so much for sharing that with us. So, you know, when you touch about mentorship, there's a quote that I know where it says, a great mentor helps you to achieve what seems impossible. So as we, as we mentor other people, we are able to open what seems like it's impossible for them. So it's great to hear that you do have passion for mentorship and that you are going on to mentor others as well. And we are also inspired to continue with the mentorship. And then touching on the point that you mentioned we where you spoke about the low lights and the stereotypes that a lot of women have to break. Those are the things that we cannot avoid, and we need to deal with them as we find them, because the young girls who are coming behind us, they don't have to go through the same struggles that we go through. We need to pave a way for them. We need to make sure that we remove any type of a barrier possible for them, that are there for them not to achieve their dreams. And we women in those influential positions have an opportunity to be able to break those barriers. So we're going to move right along to our third question, which is as follows. Women in renewable energy industry are on the rise, and how did you get into the industry? I think you have already touched on that as well. Do you want to elaborate a little bit on that?
Yes, I have definitely already touched on that. I think obviously my passion grew when I joined the consulting firm where I was doing grid integration studies for solar and
Mm-hmm.
wind farms, and I just wanted to know more. But if there's anything, I always say that the main thing is always opportunity meeting your readiness as a person. And I think you would also recall that at some point I mentioned that while I was at Public Works, I also decided to do my GCC, and I also decided to do my PRNG at the time. And I think one of the main things at the time was really not a now type of situation. I knew I was in the public sector. Maybe what I wanted to achieve then was not really in line with the sector I was in. I mean, GCC is not really a big thing within the public sector, but outside of the public sector is definitely a main thing because there's a lot of GMR tools that are required, especially in this industry. So coupled with that, when you are ready for something or when you have capacitated yourself for something, when opportunities come, it's much easier. And I think one of the main things and the most important things within this space is also networking. It's something that we should all be aware of and never take for granted. I think creating the right networks, reaching out to the right people also helps. And I think one of the opportunities that presented themselves after my consulting, I would say, experience was through just networking, headhunting. There's a lot of headhunting that happens in the renewable energy space. And this is also just for everybody who's ever wanted to be in this space. There's a lot of headhunting that happens. We sort of look at recruiting people because we know them, we know their capabilities, we know their drive towards achieving something. And it's even been made, I would say, official that there are policies which are aimed at ensuring that while I'm in this company, renewable energy company, I can actually reach out to somebody else I know who'd like to be part of the renewable energy space if there are open positions. to come and apply or recommend that person. So I would say for me, really to find myself in this space, it was opportunity meeting readiness. It was also just being out there on LinkedIn or professional networks and platforms such as this one, of course, interacting with different people, because you never know where you can land yourself. So it's really a combination of things, and it has worked out perfectly for me over the years.
Absolutely, absolutely. I couldn't agree more. Opportunity meeting readiness. When you are ready, and opportunities will come through to you. Okay, so the next question that we have is, what is the most important piece of advice you would give a woman thinking of starting their career in the renewable energy industry?
It's always as simple as just do it. Put yourself out there and put in the work. Put yourself out there and put in the work. And I think one of the most limiting thoughts or experiences that most of us women, and I'm not gonna take myself out of this equation, is things related to confidence. We tend to sometimes I would say, think we are not good enough or we are not capable of doing things. And we tend to also forget that we are humans in the midst of everything. I mean, if you are a human, it's impossible for you to know everything. Just go out there, put your work in and put in the hours when you need to put in the hours, and your work will speak for itself. But most importantly, be kind to yourself, because of course there's already barriers that you need to consistently fight. You need to prove yourself that you can do it, but at the same time, be kind to yourself. You're already doing enough, and you're a woman because you were born a woman. There's nothing you can't change. So don't break your back trying to prove that you can be more than just a woman. It's okay to be a woman, and that's that. It does not mean you are not capable because you are a woman. So anyone who wants to join the industry there's definitely a lot of opportunities in the industry, but you need to just put your name out there, put in the work, and just be kind to yourself. That's definitely the most simplest advice I'd give to anyone who wants to join the industry. I think I lost Maite.
Sorry, I was unmuted.
Oh,
Busy
okay. No,
talking
no
to my
worries.
sister.
Okay,
Thanks for
okay.
that. Yes, yes. So I was saying one of the most important points that you touched on is the impact of imposter syndrome on women. I know sometimes I have had instances where I struggled with it, whether I questioned whether I was good enough for this. But the moment we overcome that, and the moment we stand in the mirror and you look at yourself and say, I can do this. I'm going to put myself out there, and I'm going to put in the work. Let the work speak on my behalf. So, and confidence as well. So those are the points that you touch on and that I truly agree with. And the other point is the fact that we need to be kind to ourselves as women. There's so many hats that we wear on our heads. Some of us are mothers. When we get home, you need to be able to take care of the little ones. Some women, their wives, they need to do the wifely duties. There's so many other things that you need to be taking care of. At the same time, you need to be excelling at what you do at work. So you need to be taking care of yourself and making sure that you are able to have enough strength to be able to show up when you need to show up. Okay, so I do see there's a few questions posted there. Please keep them coming. Our attendees, please keep those questions coming. And okay, moving right along to the next question. Over the course of your career, have you witnessed changes in the renewable energy sector that have launched more women into the leadership positions?
Yes, definitely. I have witnessed a lot of changes in the sector that are just aimed at driving women into leadership roles. And I think,
Mhm.
in my opinion, it's still not good enough. There's still a lot that needs to be done in just ensuring that there's enough representation there. I can't be the only one sitting in the boardroom as a woman out of, I would say, 8 people or so. There's still moments where you are literally alone as a woman there in boardrooms. But I think also there's also been a lot of strategies that different organizations have employed and are employing. Some of those strategies are also in relation to economic development goals and commitments that are posed by the government. For instance, things related to public tenders in the IPP space, there would be requirements, but also on the private side of things, each and every organization has got a set of goals that they want to push that are related to diversity. So there is some work being done, but I don't also believe it's good enough at this stage. Maybe it's work in progress. There's obviously a lot more that can still be done. The industry is growing significantly, and obviously there's gonna be a time where the demand surpasses the supply. And the word of today, or from today's discussion with everybody connected, is us women getting ourselves out there and be ready to meet those opportunities when they come. The industry is going. There's load shedding left, right, and center. There's a lot of expansion in the renewable energy space, and there's going to be a need for us to supply the renewable space with people. And those people are women. We need the women in the forefront for them to be taken further into leadership and beyond. And if we don't have those women, then we actually in the dark. There's not much we can do. So in as much as organizations can do so much into putting strategies in place and goals in place, but the onus is also on us as women to put ourselves there and be ready for those opportunities. So just in short to your question, I think yes, definitely there are certain strategies being put in place. On a personal capacity, I definitely believe there could be more. There's still gonna be more. I mean, the expansion is quite hectic in the industry, so I think in the next few years we'll definitely see a lot of changes and a lot of women representation there. I would also love to see a lot of women in boardrooms, taking charge of things, because women are powerhouses.
Absolutely, absolutely. So you've heard it, ladies. Take yourself out there and make yourself available, because opportunity is definitely increasing in that space, and make yourself ready so that when those opportunities come, you can be able to avail yourselves. So there are more women that are needed in that space, and yes. So, okay, moving over to the next question is, are the talented women within your organization making it to the top leadership positions? If so, tell us why, and then if not, tell us why not.
Yeah. I think it ties up quite well to the previous question. In particularly in my organizations, yes, there is a lot of drive, which is basically just aimed at putting women there in the leadership positions. But the question obviously is always around whether women are ready to be in those positions or not. And this is also just something that is, I would say, more general, where organizations also have got a specific limitation in which relates to putting women in leadership roles. If you are put in a leadership role, of course there is a lot of expectation around your work delivery, as an example. And sometimes you get organizations feeling like maybe we can't put women because there's other commitments women have to go through. Pregnancy, and if she's not around because she needs to go to maternity leave, for instance, for 3-4 months, the business is not going to continue. Those are some of the barriers I was talking about earlier. But a lot of renewable energy organizations are pushing, or there is a very clear mandate where they need to promote women into leadership positions. But of course, they can only do so if there is enough supply for that. And this is why we then need to capacitate ourselves as women. And over and above just us capacitating ourselves as women, um, there's a lot of good going on in the renewable energy space, where you find organizations, promoting women through STEM programs. I think the STEM program I mentioned earlier, or in my bio, is in relation to a previous organization I worked for, where it was mainly just women, um, who were selected to promote, or rather to nurture younger engineers or younger girls who are interested, in STEM careers, just motivating them and so forth. So those type of programs, as well as programs that are related, or programs that are aimed at coaching and coaching, as well as mentoring, women within the space who want to be in leadership. And the reason why I also mentioned that we also need to play part and capacitate ourselves is because there's certain leadership related traits that you need to have as a human being outside of just being a woman. And now that responsibility then lies within you to ensure that you acquire those traits. By the time your company says, I need a leader for this role, you're already there. And I'll tell you a story on how I actually or on how I ended in MBA, for instance. I'm still busy with my MBA, but one of the main things is I had been through different industries, but one of the main things was always technical. I'm a technical person, I can't take that away. By profession, I'm an electrical engineer. But that also brings one dimension which I think we sometimes just overlook within the electrical engineering space, or any other engineering space, so to say, is that your technical abilities and skills can take you so far. But if you want to expand further than that, you need to understand how businesses operate, not just within corporate settings or your work setting, but even outside of that, because it doesn't end with you being, let's say, a specialist or this and that. If it aligns with who you want to ultimately become, maybe a leader, or you want to inspire through whatever you have set against yourself, then you need to always position yourself towards acquiring whatever skill you need to actually get there. So this is why at some point I was like, okay, I already have MSc, but let me do MBA, because then it's going to bring a different dimension into my technical abilities. I'm going to understand the whole view of what business is about, how businesses operate, before I even come in as an engineer within an organization. So that also helps in just ensuring that you are ready for such things. It teaches you a lot of things. This doesn't only mean, obviously, consider MBA. There's a lot of other management related type of courses, or I would say webinars, etc., that you could look into if you want to capacitate your leadership skills, especially when you need to work with people. Because as a woman in this space, you will work with a diverse group of people, a diverse group of people. Some will be older than you, mostly will be men. And the question is, how do you then position yourself to lead the diversity and to lead the different expectations and cultural backgrounds at that? So it's definitely one of the most important things. So no, organizations do push you towards the leadership, but you also need to put in the work to actually be able, or to sustain yourself in those leadership positions before you break.
Thank you. Thank you so much for a nicely broken down experience about positioning yourself into becoming a leader. You know, one would ask, how would you advise someone who is currently in a technical space? How do they capacitate themselves to go into a renewable energies industry? What are the things that they need to look into or explore into so that they can be, you were talking about supply earlier, so that they can be able to position themselves so that when there is demand, they can be in the forefront of the supply that you touched on?
Yeah, thanks for that question. I think actually a very important question, because I get approached by a lot of people who would say, I have engineering experience, but I don't have renewable energy experience, and I'd love to be in this space. The main thing is,
Correct.
if I can tell you, engineering this is the same. The technicalities of engineering are the same. I've been in different industries. If you know Ohm's law, for instance, within electrical, it's going to be Ohm's law throughout. You would have to apply the same principles throughout. The only difference is having specific experience to maybe a solar plant or wind plant or whatever, battery energy, etc., etc. So the main thing is you have already capacitated yourself, but how you present your brand to an organization that is outside of your capacity or capability actually matters. So I'm making an example. I'm coming from a space that is outside renewable, and I want to get into renewable. So how do I then look at my skills, that the skills I have acquired through different industries, and actually optimize those skills to reflect that whatever happens within the renewable energy space also still aligns with what I have. You do that by actually just preparing yourself and understanding what renewable energy is about. When you go have those conversations, be it an interview, whatever you call it, go there understanding what the industry is about and how it relates to anything else that you've acquired over time. The second thing I have also mentioned is short courses. I think that also helps a lot. I mean, you can take a webinar, not a webinar, but like those online courses. I think there's a lot of them I come across on LinkedIn nowadays where they just speak about how renewable energy is generated, the different maintenance strategies within renewable energy, etc. So that definitely also helps you, because then when you start having those conversations through discussions or interviews, someone is able to tell that, okay, this person is actually quite passionate about this topic, so it's highly likely that should be considered. And the third thing, which is also very important, I spoke about earlier, is networking. So if you want to be in a specific space, you need to learn to network with people around that space, because those are the people who could be your future business partners, your future employers, etc., etc. There's a lot of headhunting that happens, and that comes with being known by someone. And another thing is just ensuring that you put through those conversations. And I always say sometimes we limit ourselves so much by thinking, I don't want to reach out to this person because probably I'll come across as, weird or something like that. You've got nothing to lose. If you don't know me, you've come across my profile on LinkedIn and you see that Nondumiso is in the renewable energy space and I'd like to know more. Reach out to Nondumiso. If she responds, then you've won. If she doesn't respond, you didn't lose anything, because either way, you are still where you were before you reached out to Nondumiso, and you'll never know what happens at the end of the day. So definitely, I think to position yourself, just capacitate yourself, have the right conversations with the right people, and network as much as you can, because I think that's one of the main things within this space. It's all about networking.
Excellent, excellent. Thank you so much for those tips. We are definitely making notes. The next question is, research has shown that companies that embrace diversity outperform their competitors. Why is gender perspective relevant in the energy sector?
Yeah, thanks for that question. I think research is true in saying that companies that embrace diversity actually outperform their competitors. And I'm saying this because I made an example early where I think I was still in the manufacturing space, and I had to join an organization or a division where there'd never been a woman before. And the main thing there was resistance from the existing team, because they had a lot of issues in that organization and in that department specifically, where there were a lot of breakdowns. They had to do a lot of physical work, and they could not understand why a woman had to be brought into the picture at the time. And I will always remember the words from the manager, because he went to his team and said, maybe the reason why we actually suffering so much in this department, having to come through at night for standby and breakdowns and this and that, is because we have so much physical power that we lack brain power. And one of the main things that you can ever do in an organization is to balance brain power, because ultimately different perspectives will come in play, different opinions and ideas will come in your decision-making processes. So one of the main things which I say research is true on is just to ensure that you bring in more women, because women always have a different way of seeing things. It might not be aligned to whatever at the time, but any perspective that is brought by someone else different, like a woman in an organization or in a department where there's been men, is always different. So definitely I would highly, and very much strong on this, having a very diverse portfolio within an organization. And also just it increases your talent pool. It's really not about physical power all the time. And who said women can't pull a cable, for instance? I mean, we can pull a cable as well. So I think it's always those stereotypes that have been made previously for whatever reason, and that have been made to be barriers into how women perceive themselves and how they present themselves in different organizations and roles. But bringing in more women is just, it just changes everything, and it's always my priority. Any If I'm recruiting for a plant, I always want to balance the numbers, because I know if I bring a woman, then housekeeping in that plant will be proper, work will be done as well. So it's just one of those things. And just also to expand on this point is in relation to what I'm currently busy within my MBA program. So there's a lot of movement within this industry. It's a fast-growing industry. There's a lot of opportunities that are coming up, and people are moving around. The question is, why are they moving around? And I'll tell you now, in as much as my research is still ongoing, but through the interim data gathering I've done, there's a trend that actually relates to diversity. Some people are leaving organizations because they believe those organizations are not as diverse as they should be in 2023. And I think it may be one of the things that organizations have not really paid attention to. And now it brings again the conversation about having women in the energy sector, because it talks to the sustainability of the sector itself. I mean, if people are moving around, you question yourself whether this sector is going to last for the next 10, 15 years, or whatever the case. So the issue or the question of diversity is a very important topic within the industry. And I'm very much strong on ensuring that there's women representation throughout.
Thank you. Thank you for that. Definitely women can pull a cable.
Yes.
I like that part. And yes, and of course, there's definitely a different aspect that we bring into the boardroom and our brain power. There's a lot of ideas and different changes that women can bring into the industry in order to make an impact into this sector. Okay, so that was the last question that I had for you this evening. So I'm going to hand over to Lady Mpho for her to do the question and answers from our attendees. Over to you, Mpho. Mpho, you are muted.
I am unmuted now.
Can hear
Thank
you.
you so much for.
Yes, we can hear you. Go.
Thank you so much. Thank you so much again, Nondumiso, for wise words, and it's really an inspiring journey to hear what you have gone through. So, from our side, we've got a couple of questions for you. The first one is from Pilani Ngema. He says, hi Nondumiso, your profile is so very much balanced. I really admire it, from power generation transmission, smelting plant, protection department. It is indeed a complete
Paul, I'm losing you. I'm not sure if it's on my side.
engineering. Just to find out if you are remaining neutral as an EU specialized department in the mentioned above.
I lost Mpho quite significantly. I'm not sure if Maide, you were able to capture the question.
No, we did lose Mpho for a bit. Mpho, can you please read out your question again?
She's lost
Mpho,
audio.
can you hear
I can
me?
ask the question. I can ask the question, Maiti.
Thank you, Miss.
It is from Filani Ngema. Hi, Nondumiso. Your profile is so very much balanced. I really admire it, from power generation, transmission, smelting plant, protection department, and now renewable. It is indeed a complete engineering turnaround. Just to find out if you are remaining neutral as an all-rounder engineering, or in future we might see you specializing in one specific department in the mentioned above.
That's a very interesting question, Philani. Thank you so much for that question. And I think I'm more now driven towards energy because of the crisis we have in South Africa. So chances are, in the near future, in whatever I end up specializing in, it's going to be an integration of business in general, as well as just the renewable energy space, balancing the two, which is why I'm still busy with my MBA at the moment. So I don't think I'm still going to go back to core technical, but I would still love to do some publications of some technical papers from there, because I think that is still a foundation of who I am. But I'm really drifting towards more management and leadership roles within the energy sector.
Thank you. Mpho, are you able to get to the next question?
Thanks. The next question is from Ntutuko Hlanguza, and he says, in your experience as a practicing electrical engineer, what are some of the major differences and challenges when transitioning from conventional energy to renewable energy?
Thank you. Yeah, it's one of the very important questions, because I think it's a sustainability issue. There's always discussions around, renewable energy being, go green, which is great for the sustainability of our environment. But at the same time, it's really about sustainability in terms of the base load. And I think that's still an ongoing debate in terms of whether can we really go purely renewable energy under the circumstances, especially in South Africa. I mean, we're seeing other countries moving back to coal, moving back to nuclear, and it's a question of why that is happening. So the main challenge from my side, or from my end, is really just around not enough time spent on research between the different type of energy that is being employed by South Africa in general. I mean, renewable energy came in and we grabbed the opportunity because we have resources, which is great. But I don't see a lot of education and hours being put into really understanding the dynamics around and understanding the sustainability around in the South African context, or African context at large. We came in, we adapted what Europe has been doing because it seemed to be working. Now the question is, are we really in the right track, towards the sustainability, while ensuring that there's enough energy to meet the demands of our country? So I think that that's the most challenging part for me in terms of its technicalities, or in terms of its technicalities and engineering. It's still the same type of engineering principle, where you're just generating electricity from a different source. But from a sustainability perspective, it remains a question for everybody. Thank you.
Thank you. The next question is from Kayan Duvana. I believe you have answered part of it. A little bit more for him to gather and understand further what needs to happen. He's saying, I would just like to know what drives you as a woman in engineering. Also, I would like to know what made you to shift from engineering specialist path to management or leadership.
Wow, that is a very interesting question. Thank you, Kaya. I think it was Kaya. Wow. So maybe to start off, I, I believe in setting timelines for things and also having an impact. And once I have reached or felt that I have given enough to have an impact that I would have imagined in a space, then my job is done. And that's one of the reasons why I decided to sort of move from purely technical, just from an electrical technical specialist point of view, to more management. I still deal with a lot of technical issues because that's the core, but at the same time, I think I have always had a very interesting engagement with people. I love inspiring people. I love nurturing people, and I love teaching people whatever I can teach them. And I think through the different engagements, I realized that maybe there might be something in me that could be more of a leader or I don't really look at management the same way, but more like a leader or someone that can inspire. And it's one of the reasons why I then decided to balance the technical with leadership as well, because ultimately, some of the decisions that are not made by a technical person are made by leaders. And those decisions are also very much influential and important to technical people. So I felt that balancing myself through that would ensure that I, as a leader, can make those decisions in the best interest of the technical personnel and ensure that optimally we achieve whatever we need to achieve. I may have missed the first part of the question. I think it was a twofold type of question, Mpo. If you can just remind me the first part.
Yes, it was. The first part is he just wanted to know what drives you as a
What
woman
drives?
in engineering.
Okay, thank you for that. What drives me as a woman in engineering is change. I want to see change. I want to, and this is what I fight for everywhere I go. And I mentioned in the second part of the question that I set certain timelines against myself to say I want to have reached this by this time, and during that time I should have brought some change. If I can't bring that change, then I should still be in that space. If I can bring that change, doesn't matter if I could bring that change in 3 months or whatever. If it's change that can be sustainable, then my job is done. So that drives me a lot. Also, it drives me from a sense that I come from a very, I would say, disadvantaged background where these things are not known. And me getting opportunities and meeting people who have presented different opportunities for me just created that sort of responsibility within me that I need to take whatever I'm gathering back into where I come from, and not just only where I come from, basically back into where anyway, we are in South Africa, because I think these disadvantaged communities and issues are common around different, I would say, areas in South Africa. So that drives me a lot. Giving back as well as ensuring that there's change. There's still a lot to do. It's a very broad industry. There's still a lot I need to do in the industry. And that alone drives me to ensure that I do more. I put in the work and the hours and ultimately achieve that sort of change. I'm not there yet. There's still a lot to do, and I'm quite excited to just put in the work and ensure there's change. So change is the main thing.
Thank you so much. The next question takes you back to your fundamentals as a technical person. The question is coming from Lundi Lucas Mbolekwa. He's saying, what types of studies do you conduct to integrate RPP to the grids, and what tools do you use?
Wow. Hey, I'll need to go back to Power Systems 101 here. Thank you. Very interesting question. So I've used Dixaland before. I've also used ETEP and I forgot the other one I've used before, but those different power systems tools basically to you would model your plant. You already have an existing file, and then you integrate your plant. So the technicalities around that, obviously, there's a lot that goes on, but the principle is still the same, like I already mentioned. So you would have a base file that already exists with the network where you want to integrate. The only thing you do, you just model your IPP as a generator as well, but just a different generating station as your, I would say, normal um, synchronous machine, for instance, and then you integrate that, then you start checking your load balancing, the stability, the different parameters of your power system to ensure that you can evacuate power there. So it's really a lot of complexities or technical complexities, but I'm very much happy to expand on this further than this platform.
Okay, thank you. I hope Lundi, Lucas, Mboleko, you're answered. My last question comes from Mankuku Mabusela, and she says, how do you go about building your brand?
Building a brand.
Yes.
Building a brand requires one to get out of their comfort zone. And I think it, for me, in my own experience, it hasn't been an easy thing because I would say from where I come from, I am naturally an introvert, but I've had to lose some of those traits over time to build a brand. And that means taking yourself out there. Before where I am now, I used to participate a lot in SAUPEC. For instance, I used to write technical papers and had to present those technical papers. And that also presents an opportunity for you to stand tall in front of people and learn to speak to those people and answer the different questions that would come. And over and above that, I think what I don't take for granted is coaching and mentorship. There's always someone better than you, or not really better as such, but someone who can teach you a thing or two, and someone who can guide you, and someone who can see some of your limiting traits and help you work on those traits over time. So it's just one of the things that I always encourage women to also look into, over and above just women, anyone really, to look into, just to ensure that you develop yourself, because that's how you would need to build your brand. You can get, all the papers you need to get. I mean, studying is maybe the easier part, but ensuring that what you've studied is noticed and it makes an impact is another story, and that's where the branding comes in. So I'm also still not there. I would still love to be there, but it really needs you to expose yourself. And I'm very much grateful for platforms like this, because it's also part of branding. I mean, coming here, speaking to a bunch of amazing people that are all connected here also creates a platform for me where maybe somebody else who's here can be intrigued and say, let's take this further, that type of thing. So speak to people, work on your limitations, and expose yourself as much as you need to, even though it may feel uncomfortable from time to time. That's how we grow.
Thank you so much. And that brings us to the end of the Women in Engineering chapter under SAIEE. Thank you, Nondumiso Ngema, for gracing us with your presence and your wisdom. Thank you to all the attendees that have attended, taken time out of your busy schedules to come and listen and pose questions and learn. And with that, I'm saying good night. Have a lovely evening. Bye.
Thank you very much.
Thank you. Good night, everyone.